Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Today I won a really lovely game using the Leonhardt Gambit. What is the Leonhardt Gambit? Well, it comes out of the Scandinavian. E4, D5, capture, queen captures back, and now knight to C3, attacking the queen, and the queen will have to go to A5. So this is one of the main lines of the Scandinavian, and if queen doesn't go to A5, you can't play the Leonhardt Gambit. Now the Leonhardt Gambit begins with the pawn to D4. Unexpected, immediately attacking the queen. And the interesting thing about this move is that in the beginner intermediate level, so lower rated games, it is, according to the Lee Chess Community Database, the single best response in terms of win rate. So in this position, white wins 60% of lower rated blitz and rapid. And the next best moves, so the more solid moves, might be D4 or bringing out the other knight. The win rate's only about 50%. So while the Leonhardt Gambit wins 60% of the time, which is absolutely amazing. The interesting thing about the Leonhardt Gambit, it's named after Paul Leonhardt, and I sort of quickly read about him on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia gives a absolutely savage description. Says that, where are we? He's a player with a low profile and not many tournament wins, and that he has been largely forgotten by the history books. I wonder who wrote it, because that doesn't seem really very fair, does it? Now, one of the interesting things about the Leonhardt Gambit is that it really does draw the player with the black pieces down the line that you put down your line. So you tend to sort of pull them into sort of your sphere of influence, because as you can see, the only good move, now there are some differences here because this is at a lower depth compared to these ones, which is I think at depth 30. The only good move in this position for black is to take the pawn. So they have to take the pawn. And the next move of Leonhardt Gambit is now rook b1, again immediately attacking the queen. And Leonhardt was known by his fierce attacking style. So it really sort of suits, I think, my sort of play. And you can see, again, black really only has a couple of moves which are any good in this position. And that is queen to c6 or queen to d5, one of those two positions. Now, I'm going to show you potentially what you should do as a player with the white pieces for both of those positions. So the best move for black is queen to d6, and in this position black maintains their advantage, and for the player with the white pieces, pretty much there are sort of just a few sort of sensible looking moves. Basically, develop the knight or push the pawn. They're sort of sensible looking moves, and they're pretty much the only good moves. Now, you could potentially sort of bring the rook out. That's okay as well. Any of those are fine. And the same is kind of very similar with queen to c6, so c5, sorry. So it's not quite as good as d6, and generally, similar sort of ideas. So for white, you can develop the knight. You can potentially, do something about the sort of pressure on the knight. So play rook to b3. Now, can't push this pawn, obviously, because, it's defending the knight, but you could potentially develop the bishop to d3 as well. And they're probably the three best moves should the opponent play queen c5. Now, in this game, that I played, the opponent did in fact play Queen c5. Before we move any further, I might just have a quick look at the review of this game because it's really quite interesting. There we go. Not a high accuracy game between myself and my opponent, and you can see what's going on here with these multiple blunders. And then I actually get a brilliancy as well, which allows me to win the game. Very, very interesting game, this. So move on to now to the analysis again. There we are. Now, in this game, I sort of, wasn't thinking quite straight and immediately attacked the queen again with d4. Now, this is clearly a blunder because the queen can, that knight is just straight up hanging. And I didn't really see it first up. Then I sort of just lived with that. I wondered what the opponent was going to do. Very interestingly, I'm not sure they saw it either. Or maybe they were suspicious of that. And so they actually moved the queen out of the way, which is very, very interesting. So here I thought, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to develop. So develop the other knight. So a blunder because, of course, I've left that knight hanging. They play a6, I think, to defend the b5 square, because that at the moment has 3 different pieces looking at it. So that apparently is a sensible looking move, I suppose, except of course they could have just taken my knight again. I now develop bishop c4, and there is a method to the madness here. I'm going to be looking at that pawn on f7. They decide to bring their bishop out, ostensibly pinning that knight. Here I short castle, so taking that knight out of the pin. The opponent finally decides to capture. That's a good move, but you'll notice that I have a slight advantage. And why is that? Well, this is the brilliancy. Bishop captures pawn on f7 with check, of course, and this is a straight up bishop sacrifice. They take the bait, and now knight to e5, which comes with check. It opens up a discovered attack on the bishop by the queen, and the knight also attacks the d7 square, which we'll see is very, very important. Of course, the opponent moves the king out of the way, back to e8, and now queen captures bishop, and now we see the problem for the opponent. The knight defends against both those squares, so the king cannot go to these squares. The queen on d7 and on c8, either of those squares would be checkmate next turn. So there's a mate in one threat, and you will see I'm almost a +8, +9. So there's a bit of a discrepancy here, and you'll see the only good move for black, in fact, the only move that doesn't in fact lead to checkmate is to play king d8. And the logic behind that move, let's just take that off. The logic behind that move is that the queen, of course, can't go here because that would be captured, and the queen can't go here defended by the king. But in doing so, it allows the knight to basically take out that rook. So this is a very, very bad position. Now, of the sort of other prospective lines, I've actually looked at sort of all of these in a little bit more depth. And if you go to a higher depth, I think they all lead to a checkmate net. So trying to block with the pawn doesn't work. Similarly, queen capturing that pawn and sort of inviting me to take their queen, so sacrificing their queen, doesn't work either. That eventually leads to a mating net. Now my opponent decided to play knight c6, and of course then allowing for checkmate. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to consider the Leonhardt Gambit as a surprising weapon against the Scandinavian defense. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.